All right, and we're back for another episode of the Lakers Fast Break podcast. It's Gerald coming right back at you here. I'm in Texas now. Can't say I'm happy in Texas, but I'm in Texas now. We truly appreciate everyone out there listening to all of our shows, whether it's the Pop Culture Cosmos, Lakers Fast Break, Game Source, or Inside Sports Fantasy Football. We truly appreciate it. If you can, give us that 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Or also as well, you can go ahead and like, subscribe, share, do anything you can to help support our cause here at the Lakers Fast Break. Or check out the site that we're also appearing live on, LakerHolics.com. Because guess what? I'm on with my good friend. I know him as Tom Wong, but you know him as LakerTom, the guy behind LakerHolics.com. You got to be part of the conversation today at LakerHolics.com. And there is a lot of conversation going on right now at LakerHolics.com because there's some concern. I know by LakerTom, I know by myself. And that is because the Lakers, they played an ugly game, just the game that Toronto loves to play. They just played right into their hands. I think coming off an emotional letdown after such a high of beating the Clippers on Thursday, and it sure showed. I told Tom already halfway through, it just didn't look like the Lakers were going to go ahead and pull this out because it just didn't look at, not necessarily on the defense, because it showed in glimpses that their defense is probably more along than most of the other defenses are out here, because it looks like a lot of defenses so far in these NBA games are still waiting to come in and fly into the bubble, because defenses, especially in Houston, Dallas, and some other places, they're still really waiting to check in from the flight from Orlando. But offensively, there's a lot of issues, and Toronto got a real chance to ugly the game up, and they won handily today, taking charge after the game was tied at 80. And unfortunately, Kyle Lowry just really showed why Avery Bradley was a missed piece in this equation because of the type of guard he is, and needled through the Lakers for 30 points. And it just was a shame that the way the Lakers really couldn't contribute in the way that you would normally see them. Again, defensively in spots, they look pretty darn good. Kyle Kuzma played effectively in spots defensively again. So did Caruso in spots, but their rotations in guarding the three-point line, not good. And the way they handled Kyle Lowry overall left me a bit concerned. But it's offensively, their lack of execution and their shot making really poor again today, played right into Toronto's hands.
Yeah, it was a difficult game. You know, I almost had this feeling that just like when we had back in March when we'd had the great weekend against the Bucks and the Clippers, and we went out and kind of laid an egg against the Nets and lost that last game before the coronavirus hiatus. I thought this was a real opportunity for a trap game, partly because of what you're saying, Gerald, that Nick Nurse and the Raptors, you know, they are the reigning champions, and you better respect that. They play defense, and he makes good adjustments. I think without a doubt that Frank Vogel got out coached today. I didn't see the fire on the team, the way they came out to allow first a 10-point lead, and then later they tied that game and got the lead back, and then they lost it again and allowed another 10-point lead. They had to come back again from that one, and LeBron got hot from outside, hit a couple of threes to pull us back. And then they moved out early in the fourth quarter and built up like a 5 or 7 point lead, and they let that frivel away. You know, a couple of plays, you know, like Caruso almost steals the ball and not tips it right back, and they hit a three, and then to break the game open. Guys just not covering guys in the corner. I remember Pops used to have a rule for the Spurs that you never let a guy shoot a corner three all alone. You know, this is not the league that was 20 years ago where guys ran to the baskets on fast breaks. Guys run to the corners, and you just can't help so much That's lazy defense to try to help so much that you leave somebody open in the corner, or that you're not prepared for a screen like Caruso was on a couple of those key three-pointers that put nails in the coffin, so to speak. But when you come down to it, I give the Raptors credit. Kyle Lowry played a great game. All of the reasons why I've been hoping that they would just finally get tired of paying him and cut him so that, he could go to the Lakers and sign for a minimum contract and help us win a championship. He played a great game. Van Fleet didn't have a great game, but he came through at various times. Anunoby played wonderful. We kept Siakam under control, but we lost control of Anunoby. And then what it really comes down to is that, the Lakers are built for LeBron James and Anthony Davis to have good games, and neither one of them did. You look at the plus minuses in there. Dion Waiters had a good game. He had a good plus minus. Kuzma was only -5, had a couple of tough calls near the end. But LeBron and AD were just big minus, double-digit minus numbers as far as the plus minus goes, and basically didn't play good games. They shot poorly, not only for the percentages that they shot, but the types of shots that they were taking. AD did his usual damage at the free throw line, but on the other hand, Kyle Lowry even trumped him on that. Lowry was 12 of 15 from the line, and just constantly jumping into players and drawing fouls. The Lakers lost their composure from the referees, basically, and started complaining all the time. I mean, Kuzma and AD getting caught complaining down at one end while we had a fast break at a critical point that really broke that game open and late in the fourth quarter. So this was a trap game, and we got trapped good, and then actually embarrassed at the way that the game ended. So it's a good lesson. Hopefully we'll take our licks. That's 11 in a row now that we have lost to the Raptors. And watching the Raptors play, I wouldn't at all be surprised if they ended up in the finals. They're a feisty team that plays tough defense, that makes it hard to score. And they can give people a lot of trouble. They've got some good athleticism inside, so Milwaukee's going to have their hands full again, I think, this year. And if Milwaukee gets by them, it's not going to be an easy struggle to do that. So the Lakers beat the Clippers. They had a big letdown. They had a 7-game lead in the loss column. They either needed the Clippers to lose or they needed to win in order to cinch the Western Conference top spot. And so, understandably, the players weren't coming out there and playing as hard as the Raptors did. And you could see that at the various points in times where we started the game and started the second half. Both times were disastrous situations where we let the game get out of hand, and you keep fighting uphill like that. And all it takes is, a clutch 3 by Kyle Lowry to, all of a sudden turn the game into a rout. So I'm not really terribly disappointed about it. It doesn't really matter. I think, as I've said over and over, that I look at all of these seeding games, especially after the Clippers games, as merely practices to get going. But there are some genuine areas of concerns. LeBron has not played well in the 2 games that we've had so far, despite his last-minute heroics at the offensive and defensive end that won the Clippers game. He hasn't had a burst. He hasn't had that burst going to the basket. And he's been bothered because he keeps getting fouled and he doesn't get calls. It's the old Shaq thing where he's so strong that when he bounces off of people, it's not the same thing as when Kyle Lowry bounces off and falls to the ground and is able to get those calls. I was disappointed in the schemes that we ran, that we never seemed to get shots open for AD and LeBron. And that's primarily because of the defensive strategy that the Raptors deployed. They basically allowed our other shooters to be open. And there was some hesitancy because we missed our shots early, and then we saw guys overpassing, rather than taking that wide open shot, even though they've got somebody challenging them, they'd throw the ball on and then pass it around. And we just weren't getting good shots. And some of the players really, I was so angry at Danny Green in the first half. I thought he played terribly, listless on defense, and offensively just could not hit anything. He was 0 for 6 from 3, I think 0 for 8 for the game or something like that. Didn't score any points. I thought Vogel should have pulled him 5 minutes before he pulled him. KCP didn't have a good game. Dwight had a frustrating game. I mean, they should have put AD in there a lot earlier in the fourth quarter. Leaving Dwight in there does not really produce anything. And it just clogs up the middle and plays into the hands of teams that want to sag on us like that. The Raptors did a good job of recovery, and I thought at times our defense looked pretty good. After that 10-0 bad start, we really played pretty good defense. But there's a lot of work to be done, and these are the types of games that are annoying because you know that you're a much better team than that. You know there are reasons why it was perhaps not a highly prioritized game and the team didn't come out as hard as they wanted to or as hard as they should have. But it just means it just drops you back down, and then you got to pick yourself up again. So I think we play Wednesday is our next game.
Monday.
Who do we play Monday?
Monday. Let me check on the schedule of that, but they do play Monday. Then they play a back-to-back on Wednesday and Thursday. So they are not getting too much of a break this week, but they will be knocking out the schedule. And again, they only need really one more win to go ahead and sew up the Western Conference. But it looked, just when they have these emotional letdowns after these big emotional games, like they did the same thing against Brooklyn, the last game that they played before the coronavirus hit. This is very similar to that. But I also think Toronto plays a style that's very ugly, that's very physical, that the Lakers do not have a tendency to like. Now, in a 7-game series, you still take the Lakers because they don't have anybody in a 7-game series to match up with LeBron and AD. But when you ugly the series or when you ugly a game like this, it gives Toronto, a team with actually on paper less talent, a chance to go ahead and feel like they could go ahead and pull this off. And Jabba says it best, the Lakers are not bad, but the Raptors are just that good. You know what? When they have 2 wins over the Lakers this season, and they have some quality wins, and they're number 3 right now overall in the NBA. And of course, Nick Nurse is actually just always sprinkling that pixie dust as one of the best, if not the best coach in the NBA right now. So, you know what? You can't say not. You have to go ahead and legitimize them as an actual contender. So this leads me into the last question before I go ahead and tell you the schedule for what they've got coming up this week for the Lakers. Is do you see now Toronto being a viable contender for the championship? Because if you don't, which still a lot of pundits out there think that they're not, I think they're wrong, because you know what? They've proven again tonight that if they can get the game to where they want to, as far as pace, as far as dirting it up, as far as making it messy, making it ugly, turnovers, just physical. If you can get it to the way they want it, then they've got a real shot to beat anybody, Bucks, Clippers, or Lakers.
I think what it comes down to, they play the same type of defense that, in a way, that the Clippers do and the Bucks do, which is basically they dare you to beat them from 3. They're not going to give up a whole lot of baskets underneath. They're going to make sure that, especially teams with LeBron and AD, aren't going to kill them down underneath. They play a rugged style. They out-rebounded us 51-40. So I think they are a legitimate threat. I think the Bucks are still the favorites because of their 3-point shooting. The Bucks are an outstanding 3-point shooting, and they have defense, and they also have a continuity. I mean, that's one of the things that both of those two teams have, which are big advantages, I think, over the 76ers and the Celtics, that they've got a winning continuity from the last 2 or 3 seasons, and so they know how to win. They know how to run the system. They've got the same coaches. They've got essentially the same players. So it's going to be a good matchup for the East, and I think they're by far the 2 teams in the East that are going to be in the finals, as far as I'm concerned. They're the number 1 and 2 seeds at the East at this point in time, and I expect them to be that when we go into the finals. Just as I think the Clippers and the Lakers will be playing in the Western Conference Finals.
Clippers rebounded very well today. They rebounded very well today against the New Orleans Pelicans, and they have reasons to go ahead and be positive going forward. Denver still got a lot of issues with injuries. They had 3 starters out today in their loss, and they're still like all over the place.
Yeah,
in
they
the
hurt
Western
with
Conference.
Bogdanovich not being able to play really hurts their offense.
That's actually Utah.
Well, that Utah. Oh, you're right. Sorry.
That's correct. Utah is a little bit up and down. They did lose today, but they won their first game against the Pelicans. But with Utah, it's just a situation where I think that they're going to have, like you said, with Bogdanovich, not going to be able to go ahead and be as effective as I think that they would normally be. Houston, I think it's just an issue of defense. You see that they can go ahead and score 150 points in a game. Right. It's just a matter of defense and staying and sticking through it. Oklahoma City, do they have enough? We don't know yet. They still look pretty good today against Utah. And there's also Dallas, and you can throw a lot of these teams in the mix. But right now, I think you're looking at 3, possibly 4 teams if Toronto could go ahead and get in that mix right now. But still, there's still plenty of time left. This week coming up for the Lakers, I want to go ahead and make sure and everybody gets a shout out there for what Lakers schedule is coming up. That is going to be on Monday against Utah. So we'll see just how good or what kind of Utah team there is coming up on Monday. That's a 6 p.m. game out there on the West Coast coming up on ESPN. Got Wednesday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern time. That's why it's going to be a 3:30 p.m. game for everybody out there on the Western Coast. On the West Coast, that's going to be against Oklahoma City on Wednesday, back-to-back, Wednesday and Thursday. So Thursday, you're going to see LA against Houston at a 6 p.m. game. So you're going to see right away back-to-back. Then Saturday, they finish up the week against Indiana. So I will tell you right now, it's going to be a tough week for the Lakers. Again, if they go break even, I think that's all you need to do because, again, that's what's going to happen. And Jabba, he's still laying on there as the Toronto fan that he is. Why did Frank Vogel sit LeBron mid-fourth? Because I have a feeling that he thought the game was already going out of hand. Like you said, they did go on a run, Jabba. They went 7-0. Just like I said, they just did not have it today as far, especially that after what tied up, you thought they had enough, but no, I think just an emotional letdown again, like we saw against Brooklyn when they won those back-to-back games against Milwaukee and of course against the LA Clippers before. We're seeing that same thing again, but the offensive consistency is what I see as a problem, and the fact that they do need to find their shot very soon.
You know, one of the things that went through my mind as we came back and tied the game at the halftime and realizing that this is a game that it seemed obvious to me that Toronto wanted more badly than we did. I almost wondered whether it would have been a smart move by Vogel to just kept LeBron and AD on the bench the second half and give some play to some of these other guys to see what they can do, because there were a lot of guys that weren't performing. You know, Danny Green and KCP just had horrible first halves and didn't really contribute that much in the second half. So it's kind of a funny situation. You know, it's usually I'm in agreement with the moves that Frank makes, and obviously if LeBron really wanted to play, it's pretty hard to sit him down. But I sort of had a feeling that if it'd been Doc Rivers running the Lakers, that they would have probably looked at the game and saying, okay, fine, we played even in the first half. It looks like LeBron and AD didn't have it today. It looked like the team didn't have that same fire. So maybe we ought to just coast the rest of the way. These games really don't matter. However, this is the type of game that if we end up, let's say that the Raptors do end up taking down the Bucks, that's a little edge that you got there, and especially the way they ended the game. That is not the kind of thing that you want to have happen, unless the Lakers can turn it around and take that as a lesson, so that maybe they got a little too cocky, thinking that, you know, that they were going to be able to turn it on and whenever they wanted to and come back. They've sort of had that attitude that all we have to do is to snap down on our defense and we'll be back in the game. And this time they did that twice. They let the game get away in it and then snap down and come back. But the third time they were just out of gas.
I'll tell you what, my friend, there's still a lot to write about and talk about. I need everybody to go ahead and check out in the coming days, Lakerholics.com, because there's going to be constant reactions on what's going on. I will try to go ahead and post another post-game report sometime on Monday night. I don't know how early it's going to be. I don't know how late it's going to be, but I will be back in Vegas that I'm properly giving you the report that you guys deserve out there. So look for that late Monday night. I'll see if I can get LakerTom on. Also, as well, you want to go ahead and got the upcoming week for Lakerholics as far as everything that's going on there from Jamie Sweet. I know he's going to have a point or 5 points to talk about in his upcoming 5 points to talk about. So people check that out there. LakerTom, I know there's a lot for you to write about upcoming, so I want to hear your thoughts a little bit on what's upcoming for you at Lakerholics.com.
Well, I just posted an article today that was sort of a statistical analysis of how well Kyle Kuzma and Dion Waiters had played, and I thought they both showed good signs tonight. I'm going to have Rafael Barlow's going to have another Laker Film Junkies article on or video on the draft and what prospects the Lakers are looking at as possible wing defenders, which is one of the needs that we still have as a team. I have to think about what I haven't thought about yet, exactly what I'm going to write about with the game, but I will have something on it. I may focus on the next 3 games on what I expect the Lakers to do, because you now have a question of how hard do we really want to go after the next 3 games, or the rest of the season, if you will. There's some work to be done by certain players, and there's some system work to be done by Frank Vogel, and that actually could be one of the subjects that I'll try to tackle. How do we get LeBron and AD better shots than we're getting them right now? We had a little bit of success when we ran some LeBron AD pick and rolls as we started the 4th quarter and got off to a good start there. But this is a copycat league, and teams are going to look at tonight's game and they're going to say, well, look at that. Look, they're going to look exactly to try to figure out what did Nick Nurse do and what was his defensive adjustments that they made in order to make it very difficult for LeBron and AD to get going. It's the type of thing that other teams are going to probably try to copy, and we may see more of it in the next 3 games. And it's something now that Frank Vogel and the Lakers coaching staff have got to respond to and figure out, okay, what are teams going to be doing and how are we going to counter that? So it's going to be a fun couple days. And listen, we've gone over 4.5 months with no basketball. Now we've had 2 games. Starting on Monday, we're going to have 3 games in 4 days. So basketball fans can't complain about that. It'll be interesting to see what the strategy is that the Lakers deploy during those 3 games in those 4 days.
Here's a strategy. Don't let Markieff Morris shoot 3-pointers.
Boy, Markieff's shot was terrible. He and Danny Green were just throwing up bricks, man.
0 for 11 between them on 3-point. But anyways, on another bad note for you, you got to go ahead and get your salt, your A1 sauce ready, because you are going to have to eat a podcast.
It's Donald Trump's thing. It must have been a miscount of the votes by
no.
people who watched the pod or who watched that game.
I remember, Tom. I remember.
I'm gonna lather it up with a lot of salt and pepper and a lot of butter and maybe even some sugar. Anything I can do to get it down. I'm going to eat that podcast like I promised I would.
One of the 25 or 27 podcasts I did last month, LakerTom, I don't know which one it is. You're going to have to go look. It's on the Lakers Fast Break channel. But LakerTom swore that this past Thursday's game against the Clippers would be the highest rated regular season game of all time.
I can't believe it.
Not only was it not the highest rated game of all time for the regular season, it actually is on it just barely made top 10 as far as it's concerned. So, Tom, like I told you, how do you like your podcasts?
Must have been because the Yankees were playing, Gerald. That's the only thing I could think of.
Think you're going to have to eat this podcast.
I'm going to eat.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's still I will try to go ahead and touch base with you on Monday after the game.
Okay.
I'll be set up back in my office back in Vegas, so it'll sound a lot clearer, a lot better. Hope everybody was going ahead and enjoyed what they had. Listened to Tom and I shoot it out. We shoot out honestly when the Lakers win and when the Lakers lose, because they did lose tonight, and it was, like I said, a lackluster effort by the team, but still. There's some things that we need to look forward to, as far as all they need to go ahead is win basically one more in order for them to go ahead and wrap up the entire Western Conference. That should be something that I would like to see very much. 107-92 was the score tonight. Toronto played a heck of a game. We got to give them a credit. And Jabba, you made some great points. I want to go ahead and give you all the credit on that. But if you have any questions for us at Lakers Fast Break, you have any questions for Tom at LakerTom, be part of the conversation today at Lakerholics.com. You want to go ahead and enjoy our podcast. It's always available. We've got, again, over, I think, 25 to 27 podcasts I did during the month of July. You got to go ahead and check them out. It's just awesome listening with guests from all over the world. You ought to go ahead and check that out. Appreciate everyone taking the time for watching and listening on today's program. Tom, again, appreciate you taking the time as well, speaking to me. Hope you like your podcast, Extra Crispy, I think was what you told me that you liked it. So there you go. So appreciate everyone out there listening. Thank you so much for listening and watching us right here at the Lakers Fast Break Podcast.